When we hear the scriptures proclaimed each week, we're reminded of God's goodness. God has cared for his people in the past through the various miracles, the healings we hear in several of the readings tonight. We're also encouraged to continue to follow God and his will into the future. And so today, that's what I kind of want to do, is remind us of where we have been as a local Catholic church these last couple years, and to give us encouragement as we move forward in following God's will for us for the future. So the most obvious of the various changes, the things that have happened the last few years, has been the creation of our Holy Spirit Catholic parishes, family of 7 parishes, as a result of the Journey of Faith pastoral planning process. The reality of the changing demographics, the declining priest numbers, the diminishing participation in the sacramental life of the church has all required major shifts in how our parishes are organized, especially here in the rural areas. All parishes are now part of a larger families served by fewer priests. More than 20 of our rural churches no longer are able to have a weekend mass, including 2 that are in our own family. In other rural families, some groups of parishes have now canonically recombined to form new parishes to help make administration a little bit easier. So we've been in the midst of all this implementing for a while now, and are still learning how do we live as a family of parishes. And a lot of focus has been on all of the external structural type changes, leadership changes to make the families work. But there's something that's even more important than that. And that is the internal, the more cultural and spiritual changes. When we hear of the miraculous healings of Jesus, like that of the deaf and mute man in the gospel, Jesus didn't just do his miracles for the sake of their bodies, but there was a deeper purpose as well. Even more importantly, he did it for the conversion of their hearts, so they would turn back to God. So physical healing was for the sake of spiritual healing. And so in the same way, it's not enough for us just to simply make external changes in the structures of our parishes. We also need to work on the interior, cultural and spiritual aspects. Just restructuring parishes into larger families doesn't automatically mean that the Catholic faith will continue to flourish in our area. Catholic flourishing requires a renewal of our inner life of faith. And so that's why even before the Journey of Faith pastoral planning started, we talked about a vision that ultimately is based upon the vision of Jesus himself, a vision that was formulated for our entire archdiocese for this kind of interior renewal. Hopefully you recall hearing it: one church, encountering Jesus, equipping disciples, living mercy. This vision statement was further summarized by Archbishop Lucas in what he called the big goal for all of our parishes become missional parishes by 2026. We're getting closer to that. So how have we been implementing those internal or more kind of cultural, spiritual changes? Well, as one church, it's obvious we're made of 7 parishes and 1 family, but a fully Catholic mindset remembers that we're part of something bigger than ourselves, something bigger than us individually, even bigger than just a single parish. Catholic means universal. And so we've strived to do more things together as a family. We've got a pastoral council to guide the vision for all of our parishes together. We're doing more things in common, like our parish missions, religious education programs. We've got the God Nights that bring our families together from our different communities. We've implementing this year a common curriculum for grade school religious ed, and as well as for confirmation program. The past summer, we had our first Holy Spirit camp for our young kids being able to going into high school. Encountering Jesus is the next part. There's 2 main ways in which we meet Jesus. That's through prayer and through the sacraments. With regard to the sacraments in particular, these past 3 years, the bishops have been leading us on the Eucharistic revival, to renew our knowledge and love of Jesus and his presence here with us in the Blessed Sacrament. And so we've done a number of things for that, given homily series on the Mass. We've had Eucharistic-themed Lenten missions. We now have Eucharistic adoration being done at different times in all of our church locations in our family, various other things that we did during that time as well. Next is equipping disciples. Equipping disciples means that our parishes must be places for people of all ages to continually learn, not just the content of the faith, which is essential, but also how to meet Jesus ourselves so that we can then go and share him with others, both in our words and in our actions. And so we, as parishes, support our parents in teaching your children how to grow as disciples in our sacramental, religious ed, and Catholic school programs. But as adults, we also need to grow in our faith as disciples. If we stop doing that, we're going to go the opposite direction. One of those programs that we've had is our School of Mission, to help with practical skills of how do we invite and lead people into small prayer groups, especially how to the method of praying using the Scriptures. So that's equipping disciples. Next is living mercy. And that's all about recognizing the ways in which Jesus is calling every single one of us to share our gifts in service of others. And those show forth in many different ways, both in parish and community. Whether you're in a leadership-type council, or women's or men's groups, or liturgical ministries, or prayer groups, ministries designed specifically in service of others. Each of us need to listen to God's voice to understand how he's calling us each to be disciples. Because there's so many different ways in which God can use us to bring his mercy. And as we continue to be more equipped as disciples and encounter Jesus more, then we will more clearly be able to hear his call about what he asks of us to do. So, having talked about the external changes as well as the necessity of this cultural and internal transformation in the life of faith, well, where are we headed now? As we've met with different parish leaders over the last several months, it became more and more clear about we're ready to go deeper, to build upon the good things that are already happening within our parishes. So in 2 weeks, we're beginning a new initiative that we're calling Ignite. You may have seen some things about it in the bulletin. Deacon Doug made reference to it a couple weeks ago in his homily. So Ignite, to give you a little bit more of what it is our plan for prayer and evangelization growth within our parish family. It kind of comes out of the program, School of Mission, but it's desired to go deeper with prayer being the necessary foundation for growing a culture of evangelization in our family of parishes. And the name Ignite comes from the image of fire that's used often in the Scriptures for God's intense love for us. In particular, how the Holy Spirit, whom we've taken as our patron of our family, how he descended upon the disciples as tongues of fire in Pentecost. For it's only the Holy Spirit that can ignite God's love within us so that we can go forth and bring his life to others. So our Ignite will have 3 different parts to it. There are Ignite workshops that will happen twice a year. There's something called Upper Room celebrations that will happen twice a year. And then the third part is called Sunday Sparks, which will be happening throughout the year. So I'll just explain the two of them so that I don't go on forever tonight. The first Ignite workshop is coming up Saturday, September 21st from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at St. Jane Francis in Randolph. It had the format of the workshops is to provide both information and practical skills in both prayer and evangelization. Growth in prayer is essential to becoming missional parishes. And our mission is to go and share Jesus with others. But we can only do that if we ourselves have grown deeply in a relationship with him. We can't give something if we don't have it ourselves first. And so that is why the first workshop is going to include developing, we're calling the 4 habits of relational prayer. Future Ignite workshops will include more topics relating to prayer. For example, discerning God's voice in prayer, what's often called discernment of spirits, as well as, recognizing, what are the unique gifts that God has given me, the unique charisms that God has given me for the purpose of helping others. Also, there will be evangelization-related topics as part of those workshops, including practical skills about how to share the gospel. How do I share it in context of my own experience and testimony in relationship with the Lord? If God's calling me to form prayer groups, how practically do we go about doing that? You can sign up for the first Ignite workshop through the link in the bulletin flock note you would have gotten earlier today. Or call the office and let them know that you want to attend, so we got some numbers for the meal that's part of it. There'll be more Ignite workshops following that. The next one will be in the spring. But in this, we also recognize that we can't just focus on prayer twice a year, like the workshops will be. We've kind of had that tendency in the life of our church, where we focus on prayer during Advent and Lent. But those seasons are meant to enhance a prayer life the rest of the year. If we go through those seasons and then go back to our normal life, which doesn't maybe not have as much prayer in it, then we shouldn't be surprised if nothing really changes in our relationship with God. And that's where the second part of the Ignite program comes, the Sunday Sparks. And Sunday Sparks will occur after each of the Saturday and Sunday Masses, every other weekend. The first spark is going to be in 2 weeks when I'm back here on this end, September 21st and 22nd. For a spark, basically, you gather for 10, 15 minutes right after Mass for a brief presentation that I'm going to give on some aspect of prayer. And they're really designed to be pretty short and give you practical wisdom of how to be able to apply to our life of prayer, especially during those following days and weeks until the next spark. If you struggle with prayer, if you wonder how do you make it a more personal connection with God, if how to navigate the ups and downs of the spiritual life, how to recognize God's voice more easily through prayer, pointers for dealing with things like distractions in prayer, and so much more. Sparks can be, like it's supposed to sound like, a continual source of heat for our flame, like a billows to make the flame, the sparks begin to fly a little bit more, to help us remain more consistent in our prayer throughout the year. So Sunday Sparks will give us a language both to think about and to speak about prayer based upon the rich spiritual traditions of the church, including the wisdom of the saints. And provide also opportunities for us to talk to each other about it. Some fellowship and sharing and support in that. So my next homily, when I'm here in 2 weeks from now, the weekend we'll start the Sparks. I will also talk a little bit more about prayer and Sparks that day as well. The Holy Spirit Catholic Parishes Ignite, the workshops, the Sunday Sparks, the upper rooms, which I'll talk about in the future, are all about bringing together those external structural changes and the interior vision so that we can indeed become a family of missional parishes into the future.